It's been a while since I've done this, so.
Yeah.
What do you think? That sounds good. I think that'll be high enough.
Yeah.
What do you need?
Can we get that thing put about here so I can plug it?
So, are you streaming to that group?
Yes.
Where do I find it? I'm in the event.
You are?
Yeah.
I got lots of people on it, so I'm not sure why you're not seeing it. Well, that's our regular page
Right,
there.
right.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why you're not getting on there. I seems to be. I hope you're not listening to me. Those people,
They probably are.
yeah.
Oh, sure. Sorry, Shannon.
Are you okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm good. Hey, Michelle, I got your seat right here. Yep.
Are you I'm in front seat? Oh, yay! Michelle, really.
Hey. Yes. Yes.
I'll go with that. So glad.
this? We're just trying to find a few more chairs for people here. We'll get started shortly. Hi, I'm Rob.
Lisa. I know we've met at Gallery 1.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Rob, Lisa.
Rob,
I'm
Lisa.
Rob. You're Lisa, right?
Yeah, it's okay tonight. It's whatever. I am so excited to read.
Oh, good. Me too.
I am really
Lisa, what's your last name?
Davidson.
Davidson. Okay. I'll try to
So I
remember.
bought Jane and Gordon's house. Gordon McDonald, Jane
Oh,
Wright.
okay. Gotcha.
Out of Kansas.
Yeah.
So when I bought it, they were from the other side of the East Coast.
Yeah.
Had to get out of Seattle.
Yeah.
Friends said you had to go to Ellensburg. Why do I want to go to Ellensburg? You got to be kidding me. And I never loved a town as much as I love
Brothers, birthday.
So I was raised in Connecticut and Maine. And
I live in New York City for.
I'm in New York City for about 15 years.
Yeah, I lived there for 30.
Did you? Where?
I lived in Compton for Baker and Third. And I had a studio. My studio was on Lake Street.
Which wasn't, I lived there in the 70s.
Yeah, I moved in the 70s, late 70s.
Okay, so Rebecca was there.
Yeah, it was industrial factories. And then artists started taking it over. And I had a studio there for about 15 years. Fraser. So, yeah. I grew up there. I never did get it. Hold it. I'm sorry. Hold. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm Steve Burhigh, the chair of the Kittitas County Democratic Party. And Indivisible Ellensburg deserves some special recognition here because they're the ones who got the ball rolling for this event. And, over here is Andrea Sledge, the lead. Thank you for all your work and everything you do. Tomorrow, I want to make a quick pitch for an event that we're having tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to have our Get Out the Vote kickoff, our GOTV kickoff. And we're going to be talking to voters. We don't have it as bad as some jurisdictions have. We only have maybe 5,000 voters that we'd like to talk to remind them to vote in the primary. And especially this year, because we have such excellent candidates, one of the things that might inhibit voters from voting is not knowing what to do, not knowing who to vote for. And so when we send volunteers out into the field to remind people to vote in the primary, and did anybody receive the ballot today, by the way? Look at that. Yeah, all right. Well, fill those suckers out and turn them in so that we don't have to come and talk to you too, all right? But what we're going to be telling our volunteers is that if the voter expresses any sort of confusion or has any interest for any kind of guidance, we're going to ask the volunteer to share their own personal preference among these three candidates. Obviously, we're not going to tell the voters how to vote, but the voter might find it helpful to hear from someone who has a favorite candidate and why. So I have a clipboard here, a sign-up sheet for people who are interested in helping us contact voters to remind them to vote. We'd really appreciate your name, your legible email address, and your phone number, so that we can involve you in trying to contact 5,000 voters between now and August 7th, Election Day. Question.
Where is that thing tomorrow night?
Oh, the thing tomorrow night.
Yes.
The thing tomorrow night is at the Kittitas County Democratic Party headquarters, which is at 417 North Main, better known as the place just north of Iron Horse Brew.
And what time?
At 5 o'clock tomorrow. So, another question.
Is this just for walking and knocking, or can you do phone calling, texting?
Walking and knocking is the best way,
Right.
but phone calling works too.
I can't
Yeah, we
really-
can hook you
We
up.
will absolutely take you for phone calling.
Okay, so
Yeah,
should
we will
I?
absolutely take you for in whatever way
Yeah.
you would like to help. It is incredibly important that we turn out as many Democratic voters as we can in Kittitas County. Incredibly important. So there are multiple pages for this sign-up sheet. As we fill them up, just turn to the next page. I'm going to start it up here, and hopefully it'll make its way through the audience and wind up back there so I can find it again. All right? So with that, I'd like to actually, I can't introduce our moderator because he said he's going to introduce himself. So instead, I'm just going to turn this over to our moderator tonight. Again, thank you all for being here. We're looking forward to a really interesting evening.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you to the fine servers at the Yellow Church who were so quick and speedy with their excellent service and food. Good evening and welcome to the Howe Homes. Oh my God, can you sound from Seattle? For the Howe Homes Community Center in Ellensburg, smack dab in the middle of the 8th Congressional District. Tonight, the top 3 Democrats running for Congress in the district will face off on the issues of health care, immigration, and who's got the best strategy to win in the general. We asked that each of the candidates focus their answers on how these issues will affect people specifically in Central Washington. I'm Rich Smith, staff writer at The Stranger. Tonight's event will look a little different than the 14,000 candidate forms you may have seen already or participated in. One request, the Kittitas. One request the Kittitas County Democrats have had for many people is for more opportunities for interactions between the candidates. As a way of providing this in an orderly manner, we will be using a debate tool called a point of information. It's a little weird, so you'll have to pay attention. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to address each of the issues in whichever way they wish. During the presentation, however, each of the other candidates will be allowed to ask up to 2 points of information. The presenting candidate will be expected to accept at least one of these requests. We're budgeting 30 minutes for each issue to allow time for these interruptions. And I'm here basically to keep the time and keep the peace. And if I think there's some interesting arguments happening, I might kind of let it roll a little bit too. So, allow me to introduce the candidates. To my immediate left, we have Kim Schreier, Spanish pediatrician. We have Jason Ritterheiser, attorney from Eburg. We have Shannon Hayter, public contractor from Eburg. All right, our first issue. Oh, you have a question?
Can we open some doors in here?
Is it?
It's probably gonna go very
So I'm very sorry to interrupt, but we've been told that the air conditioning won't work if the doors are open, and so it'll actually warmer rather than cooler. So we're just gonna give the air conditioning a chance to catch up, and if it doesn't, then we'll open the doors back up.
right on.
The other thing that I forgot to mention to you, which I'm sorry, is that the people in the back can't see who's speaking, but if the speakers stand up, then the people on the internet can't see. So, if you add to your duties as moderator, just mention the name of whoever is speaking. As the people speak, so we know who's talking.
Make sure you tell us when Jason's talking.
You got this. Okay.
Yeah. I could probably do that, actually. Yeah. No, we want to see all four of them at the same time.
Kim has translated your instructions to me, Steve, and now I understand. All right. Medical communication specialist, in addition to being a pediatrician. All right, so the first issue is healthcare. Yeah. Public health doctor, come on. Work for the CDC, man. First issue is going to be healthcare. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So Shannon Hayter will have 5 minutes to present. During that time, of course, the other candidates can call for a point of information and might get a little conversation going. All right, Shannon.
All right, good evening.
They have on-off switches, sorry. Which one of them?
All right. Good evening, Ellensburg. I'm Shannon Hayter, and I'm running for U.S. Congress in that seat that Dave Reichert is stepping down from, and the seat we're going to keep Dino Rossi out of. So it is really my pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm just going to jump in with healthcare. And I'll tell you, my slogan for this first riff is universal healthcare, more than just a slogan. Okay? So I bring a pretty deep experience in healthcare. I have, as a medical doctor, I'm an internist and a pediatrician. We call that med-peds, or cradle to grave clinical care. I'm an infectious disease doc. And I have worked as a medical doctor in all sorts of clinical settings. Everything from academic medical centers and VA medical centers to public clinics and public hospitals to, frankly, clinical settings all over the world. I've also done a lot of work on the policy side. Everything from helping clinics set themselves up or improve quality, to being on the board of a safety net hospital during healthcare reform, to being a Robert Wood Johnson Health Policy Fellow on the Hill during the first year of Obamacare implementation as a senior health policy staffer for Senator Ed Markey. So that's going to inform a lot of what I talked to you about tonight. So, number one most important thing to know about me, I believe that healthcare is a right. I wouldn't have spent my entire life fighting to make people healthier if I didn't believe that's true. And I am for 100% truly accessible, which is more than just insurance or payer coverage, affordable, high-quality healthcare for all, period. So, a lot of you have heard me talk before, and on my website there's a lot on the payer and cost side of healthcare, and I'm going to get to that because that's where we have to do a lot of stabilization and reform. But since I'm here in Kittitas, I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about the other parts of access that particularly affect our rural communities. So the things I want to start out with are talking about preserving our critical access hospitals like Kittitas Valley Hospital, right? expanding the things that work in areas like these, incentivizing providers and systems to fill critical gaps, and making sure we got public health going on too. So, first, critical access hospitals. How many here have ever used KVH? Raise your hand. How many here would be happy if KVH went away? Right? So here's the thing, critical access hospitals are there for a reason. They're there to make sure in our more rural communities, you have a place to go when you urgently need care, and you don't have to drive over the mountains to get there. Now, they are truly at the margins of survival. They have to be operated very carefully to be able to survive. Medicaid expansion under the ACA has been huge for making Kittitas Valley and other critical access hospitals sustainable. The coverage of more and more patients with insurance so they can pay, that helps as well. But they also get grants and different payment systems that helps recognize that it's more expensive to stay in business when you're in these rural hospitals. And I'm pointing that out because those special payments are always under threats. Always under threats by Republicans in particular, but not only Republicans all the time. You'll hear about, oh, you'll save so much money if you just get rid of that hospital. So I want you to know I will fight to make sure we not only preserve Medicaid expansion and increase coverage for everyone, but we also preserve the special payments and payment plans that help keep KVH sustainable. Second, expanding things that work. For example, telemedicine. Anybody here use telemedicine? Raise your hand. Very few, right? So telemedicine is a great newish thing. It's not actually that new, but right now we got a lot of limits on how it's used and who has access and what conditions you have to meet before even Medicare will pay for it. And a lot of times you have to go to one doctor's office to be able to telemedicine to another specialist's office someplace else, as opposed to doing it from your own home. Now that doesn't make a lot of sense for folks with chronic diseases, folks who are aging, and folks who live a long way from that very first doctor's office. So I will absolutely support expanding those programs and allowing payment through Medicaid and Medicare and our expanded healthcare coverage in, I'm not understanding the time count. There's this hand
Oh, there's 3 seconds left.
Oh, of everything?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I make a point of information?
You can request within 10 seconds that Hader has. Will you accept? Do you accept his request?
Well, what is it?
What we'll do, if you accept, you'll have like a more conversation. Yeah, give you more time to answer, and then you can finish your point about telemedicine.
So me first and him?
No, he gets to
Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah.
We're working this out. We'll figure it out. Would you co-sponsor HR 676 Medicare for All?
Good question. You know, and Jason and I have talked about this a bit before. Not necessarily. I want to wait and see what is online January 2019. I think HRH 676 has a lot of good things, but it's got some problems in my brain as well. One of the problems is it essentially eliminates the Indian Health Service without having tribal approval for that. And I'm just not for that. Our Indian Health Service, I am quite familiar with, in part because I was a Commissioned Corps officer in the U.S. Public Health Service, so a lot of my colleagues and peers have been part of the Indian Health Service over time. And the IHS and the guarantee of health care, not just the guarantee of health care coverage, is part of what many tribes have negotiated in their treaties way back when they gave away the land. So I am not for overruling those treaties without consultation and without acknowledgement of the tribes.
Finish up your point about telemedicine.
Anyways, I'll make sure we expand telemedicine with priority to the places it's needed to work, but more importantly, we also have provider gaps in medical care of all sorts, mental health services, addiction medicine specialties, in specialty care and primary care, and especially in geriatrics. And we are amidst the aging of our population. We need to make sure we've got well-trained geriatricians accessible here, and we need to incentivize that by more trainings, more incentives for practicing in rural areas, and making sure to get you what you need. Thanks.
All right, Jason Riverizer, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. This is my hometown, and I'm very proud to be running for Congress in the 8th Congressional District. There's obviously a lot of familiar faces here, and I'm so grateful that you all are out. Look at this audience. Seriously. Just have a round of applause. Now, I do believe that healthcare is a human right in the United States of America. But the debate over healthcare in this country is really an economic debate. Because we have figured out how to provide healthcare and treatment to people who can afford it. Dr. Schreier knows how to treat children. Dr. Hader knows how to treat crisis in the public health arena. But what we haven't solved in this country is treating people who can't afford it. That's the critical debate we have, and it's an economic one. Because our healthcare system doesn't provide comprehensive, universal healthcare coverage, especially for people who cannot afford it. That's the crisis we're in. We've created a healthcare system that puts profits above patients. And to me, that's unacceptable. I believe that healthcare is a human right. But to understand how to solve this problem, let's look at the basic facts of our healthcare system in general. Our healthcare system was not designed as some overall scheme to provide healthy outcomes. It wasn't. It was a product of World War II and a taxation system. The reason that employers provide your health care is because after World War II, the US government was worried about inflation. And they decided that we put caps on increasing wages. So employers were looking for opportunities to incentivize and attract talent. And so what they did is that they provided benefits, one of those being health care. Then we passed tax reform that incentivized employers to provide health coverage, and here we are today. So let's look at the scorecard of how healthcare works in rural America, especially in rural Washington. 34% of the patients in Kittitas and Chelan County combined are on Medicaid. 34%. 16% are on Medicare. 15% are uninsured. That's 65%. Only 35% of the patient population, only 35%, are participating in the private exchange, are participating in private health care. That's not a system that works for everybody. In 1965, we passed Medicare. President Johnson passed it. In 1 year, it was implemented and run. In 1 year. They did it on 3x5 note cards because it was before the internet. At the time, 65% of seniors over the age of 65 were covered on health care, 35% were not. Those statistics line up with what rural healthcare looks like in the United States of America. I believe that healthcare is a human right. I believe the path towards solving the issue of access and the path towards solving costs is Medicare for all. I would co-sponsor HR 676. And the reason I would co-sponsor HR 676 is because not only does it provide universal coverage for every single man, woman, and child in this country, it also wraps in eyes, ears, and teeth. It wraps in prescription drug costs, which we have to combat. Dr. Schreier uses insulin. As a nation, we consume 15% of the world's insulin. 15%. We pay as a country 52%. We are subsidizing everyone else's use of insulin across the globe because we have not allowed the federal government to negotiate drug prices. We need to take that back. We need to send people to Congress who take bold positions on healthcare, who will stand up and fight every single day and are unwilling to accept a system that doesn't provide healthcare for every man, woman, and child in this country. The Indian Health Services, which Dr. Hader brought up, that's important. I have the bill right here. What it actually does is for a 5-year period, it doesn't touch Indian Health Services. And then after a 5-year period, it allows Congress to look at the system, and if the Medicare for All system is working better, they can integrate it. That's the same thing it does with veterans care. That's a 10-year period. Sure.
Who decides, the tribes or Congress?
Well, I have the bill right here. After a 5-year period, there's a review period. And if in fact Medicare for All is working better, then it rolls into the Medicare for All system. And here's what's important, and why it's so darn critical that Democrats take back control of the House. Because when we're reviewing these type of issues, when we're making these decisions, who do you want at the table?
I want the tribes at the table.
So do I. So do I. That's exactly right. And that's exactly the type of leader I'll be in Congress, because here's the thing. We solve complicated issues when we have everybody at the table. We solve complicated problems when we bring everybody around to address these issues. And guess what? We're going to have to find some good Republicans on the other side to bring them along with us to solve this challenge. And I'm going to fight every single day to do that.
Point of interest.
Yeah, go ahead. I've accepted for him.
Jason, how long do you think that it will take to roll out 676, and what will you do in the meantime for my patients?
Well, in 1965, it took us 1 year. We didn't have the internet. This is a bigger project. HR 676 calculates a 2-year implementation period. And we've got to fight every single day to make sure we're moving towards covering every single man, woman, and child in this country. We can pass legislation that addresses some of the issues in the interim. We can lower the age to buy into Medicare. We can raise the eligibility for Medicaid. We can allow people to buy into Medicare on the exchange. But I don't buy the premise that we can't pass Medicare for all immediately and implement it now.
All right. Dr. Schreier, close us out on healthcare, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Well, as you heard from Jason, I have type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed when I was 16 years old. And in part because of that, I decided to become a pediatrician and take care of children like me. Well, I've been working in this healthcare system for the past 17 years here in Issaquah, 20 years total, and I have seen firsthand what a broken system we have. And frankly, I'm the only doctor who's been working in this system, and I think that gives me some pretty special qualifications to try to help fix this healthcare system. Right now, the help you get depends on your socioeconomic status and your employer, and that is just plain wrong. A woman named Erin reached out to me recently, and she and I have some commonalities. We were each diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as teenagers, and we are each in our 40s now. But that's pretty much where the similarities end, because I've been really lucky. I've had great employers, I've had great insurance, I've been able to have a pump and test strips and everything else I need, and so here I am, healthy and running for Congress. Well, she did not win the employer lottery, and so she is in end-stage renal disease, and she's getting dialysis 3 times a week. That is a flippin' travesty. That should not happen in our country. Our health should not depend on our wealth or our employer. And right now, we live in a country where that is the case. We live in a country where healthcare costs are the #1 cause of bankruptcy, where parents need to think twice about whether to take their children to a doctor because they might not be able to put food on the table, where people with pre-existing conditions don't know if they will be able to afford care next year. I want to live in a country where nobody has to face the prospect of bankruptcy just because they get a chronic disease, and nobody has to decide between paying their premiums and paying their mortgage. And that is why I am running. I have rolled out a healthcare plan, a whole policy, because my patients cannot wait. I do believe that Medicare for all is where we should be headed. But I also have moms in my practice crying because they can't afford their premiums, and that is why we need to do something now. We don't have the luxury of time, and that is what my healthcare plan introduces. It has 4 pillars. And the first pillar, and this is a really important one, is having Medicare as a public option buy-in. You could buy into this on a sliding scale, and for those who cannot afford it, there will be subsidies. And what we know is that congressional budget analyses show that if you have a public option, costs go down for taxpayers, and costs also go down for consumers. This means if you're an individual, you can choose Medicare instead of private insurance. It means if you're a small business owner and you want to do the right thing for your employees, you can choose Medicare instead of private insurance. It brings prices down across the board, and it makes cost no longer a barrier. The second pillar of my plan is shoring up the ACA. It was a great first step. It gives protection for people like me with pre-existing conditions, people over 50. We need to bring back the subsidies and the reinsurance and the individual mandate that stabilize the insurance marketplace. Those are critical. We need to shore up the ACA, not destroy it. The third pillar is addressing costs overall, because healthcare in this country is just plain too expensive. We spend twice as much as Canada per person per year, and we get worse outcomes, and that should not be the case.
This is in every realm, but I feel it with my insulin at the drugstore because it used to cost $40 a bottle and now it costs $260. And I send my patients to Canada to buy EpiPens because they cost $50 there and $600 here. We should not be paying more for our medications here than they're paying in Canada. I see that I have little time left, but I have a 5-step plan for how to bring those costs down that you can find on my website. I should also mention that the 4th pillar is a greater thinking just about where medicine is headed. It has to do with research, and it also has to do with rural medicine, because we already have a shortage of doctors in rural areas, and we need to make sure that that does not get worse and that we provide excellent care no matter where in the country you live.
Yeah, plenty of information on
Can I
that.
ask a quick question?
Of course.
Would you co-sponsor HR 676?
Well, similar to the other doctor in the room, I have concerns about 676. One of them is that I worry that veterans will have a lesser quality of care under 676 than they have now. Another is that unions have negotiated excellent health care packages, and I would want to be sure that there are no compromises there, that they would be taking a step backward in this sort of a program. Third, have you noticed who is in the White House? I do not trust this administration to administer all of our health care. And that gives me grave concerns about what would happen to that under a Trump administration.
Anybody else want to use their points of information? You get 2. All right. The next topic is immigration. We'll start this time with, do attorneys have honorifics like that? Is it like Esquire? Does that indicate an attorney? Jason River, Esquire. Jason.
Yes.
Juris Doctor, Jason River. Immigration.
Yeah, we're just going to go with Jason. I served as a criminal prosecutor for King County for a number of years, and really, it was a privilege to go to work every single day to protect the community and to be a voice for crime victims. I also went to private practice and served as a labor and employment lawyer, fighting on civil rights issues on behalf of workers who had been discriminated against in the workplace. And the debate around immigration in this country is a civil rights debate. It is the debate around dignity, it's a debate about equality, and it's a debate about justice. That's the debate we're having on immigration in this country. So I brought something to read to you. It says, I didn't cry the first day when I was at this facility, but I began crying all of the time on the 2nd and 3rd day because I missed my mother. That is a 10-year-old girl from Honduras in federal custody. I signed papers in front of me in English and I couldn't read. I didn't know where my daughter was. It's a 19-year-old mom from Guatemala. She has a 3-year-old daughter. They told me I could not get asylum because I'm a minor. I asked to speak to a lawyer and they said no. It's a pregnant 15-year-old girl from Mexico. That's what we're doing with immigration right now. We have a moral crisis on our southern border that isn't over. We have to stand up and do every single thing we can to stop it. When you run for Congress, you have an opportunity often to talk about what's in the headlines. But if you have a particular set of skills to make a difference, you have to use it. That's why we launched a nationwide pro bono legal effort to represent federal employees, immigration officials who will stand up and oppose Trump's illegal and immoral immigration policies. Because federal law protects federal employees from engaging in unlawful behavior, from being directed to carry out illegal conduct. And there are a lot of really important organizations across the country who are stepping up and taking on these civil rights fights, representing the mother who's been stripped from her child, representing the child who's in federal custody. Those are protracted fights in our court systems that will take a long time, and I gotta be honest, I'm a little nervous based on who we're putting in the Supreme Court, because that's where these fights end up. So we have to have innovative approaches to solving these challenges. There's not another person in the country that thought of representing federal employees as a way to combat this issue. Rachel Maddow picked it up. Because she started talking about it, we had hundreds of lawyers across the country come out of the woodwork to step up and join our effort. That's important. That's a way to take on the Trump administration's illegal and immoral policies. And look, that's going to be one of the fights we have in the 116th Congress. But it's not enough just to reunite kids with their parents. We have to pass a clean DACA bill to protect dreamers. And by the way, even our friends on the other side of the aisle agree with us in the 8th Congressional District. The tree fruit growers wrote an op-ed in the Wenatchee World, spokesman Tribune, just a couple of weeks ago, that said, we have to pass a clean DACA bill and protect dreamers. We could get a bill through Congress if we could get a vote. The problem is the Speaker of the House controls which votes go on the floor, which bills go on the floor, and what we get to vote for. We could pass this bill if we take back control of the United States Congress, and Democrats are in control of the House. That is why it is so darn important that we win in this district. But it's not enough just to stop at DACA bill. We have to pass comprehensive immigration reform in this country that focuses on a couple of things. One, there is dignity in immigration. Two, we're a nation of immigrants. You don't have to look that far behind my family tree to see we came through Ellis Island. Three, we do not separate families in the United States of America ever. We need people who will go to Congress and not be a good vote. We need people who will go to Congress and stand on the front lines of this fight and fight every single day. We need people in Congress who understand these civil rights fights, who will look at issues from a different angle, who understand how to wield oversight authority, who understand how to utilize subpoena power to compel federal agencies to do what's right. This immigration issue, this is not about Democrats and Republicans. It's about American values. We need to send people to Congress who will stand up and fight for American values and protect people, because that's the American thing to do. Send me to Congress and I'll solve this one.
Dr. Shire?
Well, we are a nation of immigrants. All of us, unless some of you are Native American, came from somewhere else. My grandparents fled a hostile Europe, coming here for safety and for a better life for their families. And the day that we forget that this country is rich because we are a nation of immigrants is the day we really lose our soul as a country. Not just that, our economy depends on immigrants. Our farms would fall apart without immigrant laborers, documented or undocumented. Small businesses, half of them are owned by immigrant families. And our technology economy would fail as well without visitors from foreign countries. What we're seeing now in this country is horrifying. It is the worst in xenophobia and dismissal and intolerance of immigrants. These are recollecting some of the darkest moments in history. Fundamentally, our immigration system is broken, but we're seeing it most acutely now because this administration is sending a directive and ICE is implementing these draconian policies that are simply un-American and unethical. They are taking children away from parents. They are choosing to put refugees in jail, raiding places of work just to terrorize immigrants, and imprisoning families rather than going after who they should really be going after, criminals. This is not how I want my tax dollars spent. I would rather put an ankle bracelet on a refugee and give them a court date and not spend the money holding everybody inside a prison. This is inhumanity and man's inhumanity to man, right center stage. Now, regarding family separation, this is something that I can speak to even more than all of us who know that this is inhumane and this is just wrong and un-American. I can speak to this from the standpoint of a pediatrician, because this is not just inhumane, this is not just cruel, this is also abuse. Because when you subject, especially young children with developing brains, to this kind of toxic stress, you change the way that neural pathways in the brains develop. These kids will regress developmentally. We are doing them to failure in school. We are causing emotional problems that are lifelong. And believe it or not, this leads to physical health problems later in life as well. These are permanent consequences of a senseless and inhumane policy. Now, here in the 8th district, our economy will fall apart without immigrants. I speak with orchardists, cherry farmers who have a very short harvesting season. And their farms will fail if they do not have immigrant laborers. And the fact of the matter is many don't show up to work, some have been deported, and they are worried. In the tech part of the district, we rely on workers with H-1B visas. And we have a government now that is threatening to shorten those, not renew those, which means that families like my son's best friends will come, set down roots, get expert in their field, and then we export that expertise back to India. That is not good for America. It is not good for those families. And half of small businesses are owned by immigrants. Look, we need comprehensive immigration reform now. That is really the solution to our woes. And I will fight for secure borders without a wall. I will fight for a path to citizenship for the 11 million people who are here now without documentation, but who are contributing to our society, who are paying taxes, and who are keeping our economy afloat. I will fight for a clean DACA bill because these dreamers should not have their lives in limbo because we cannot pass a bill and we hold them hostage. And frankly, I will put an end to this terrorizing of families by ICE. We need to remember that our country was built on immigrants. We also need to remember that traditionally it is the children of immigrants who become our Nobel Prize winners, who become our inventors, who become our medical researchers. And that is no different now. It is the people who are coming here now whose children will be the farm owners, the business owners, and tomorrow's mothers and fathers of invention. The day we forget that, we lose America's soul.
Dr. Hayden.
So I'm going to wrap up the last before I start on immigration. Didn't quite cover my core that affects everyone in our country. Number one, for healthcare, lower drug prices immediately by instituting the bargaining power of Medicare to negotiate with pharma. Two, allow people to opt in or buy into Medicare at younger and younger ages and bigger markets so that we grow Medicare and we immediately start to reduce costs of those who are left in the private market. Three, accelerate cost reforms and fraud prevention to put money back into the system more and more quickly. And four, and this is what I really care about, is making sure from a federal level we provide the flexibility and the wherewithal for states that are ready to go single payer to get out in front and do it, make it touchable, tangible, work out the kinks, show everybody else how good it is, and make everybody want it. So, immigration. Boy, you know, one of the things I worry the most under the Trump administration is that the hits keep coming so fast every day that we get numb to them. And we somehow start to think that this is all normal. That is dangerous, right? So we have to continue to realize what we are seeing, the attacks on immigration, our pro-isolationist, anti-immigration stance coming out of this executive is completely unacceptable and against our values. Just wanted to review for us what we've seen so far in terms of the Trump administration. First, we saw the travel plan, version 1, 2, 3, how many would get through. Then we saw the attack on the poor and the pigmented countries, as we call them, S-hole countries coming in. Then we saw the refusal to support DACA. We've seen the implementation of ICE out of control, taking all authorities to the extreme and destabilizing communities and working in ways that I think we never wanted to see. We've most recently seen even more separation of families at the borders. And, you know, we are just continuing to expand this, it seems like, every day. So what are we going to do about it? How do we make sure that we live the value that we are stronger, smarter, wealthier here at home? When we recognize the power of immigration, we promote and recognize the hard work and contributions in our communities, and we avoid destabilization. We fight it and fight the Trump administration. So there's a few areas I think is really, really important to address first, and they really come out to keeping families together and reuniting them, recognizing those hard work and contributions of our fellow immigrants. Number one, we are still not through this acute separation of children from their families at the border. It terrifies me that we might not be through by January 2019.
I have a point of information for you all on that last topic. Take a minute if you need it. Last week, Congresswoman Jaya Paul introduced a bill that would establish a task force that would have dismantled ICE within a year. A lot of support in the room, let's at least as claps go. I'd like to start it with Hader and going down the line. Would you have co-signed that bill, supported that bill, voted for that bill?
You know, I don't think so, because what I'm most concerned of is the function more than the form. I'm really worried that just changing the form, so changing the name or abolishing ICE rather than looking at the core culture, the authorities, the performance, the staffing, the outsourcing to private sectors where we're incentivizing deporting people. I think we need to address all the elements of function, set new standards, and transform expectations. It might be that we have to abolish ICE to do it and replace it with something else. But just abolishing ICE and not addressing what those gaps are, I don't think we'll accomplish the goal. So I'm going to focus on content, function, authorities, culture, expectations first, and then what the structure and the name is after that.
No, I wouldn't sign on the bill. Here's why. Placing the blame on the federal administration and the agency that is getting the directives to carry it out, I think is slightly misguided. We have to attack the administration that is putting out these directives and ordering ICE to go out and separate families. That's what also, it's important to understand where ICE and how ICE was created. ICE came out of the same type of legislation when the Patriot Act was signed. We have to look at some of those overreaches, some of those civil rights abuses that are occurring because of that legislation. We need to correct a whole bunch of legislation that we crafted right on the back end of 9/11. The other thing about ICE, we have to make sure that the directives they are getting reflect our values. Congress can step up and lead on this issue and pass laws that direct ICE how to act. That's the problem we're seeing. We have an executive who is wielding authority with no oversight from Congress. No members of Congress are willing to step up and pass a law. That's how we solve this challenge. That's why it's so critical to take back control of the House.
I'm horrified by what we're seeing with ICE and their overreach and the way that they are terrorizing people in this country. The problem, however, comes further up. It's the directive that is going to ICE, and that's what needs to be changed. And that is why we needed a flip of Congress to have a Democratic majority to put checks on this president to make sure that we get comprehensive immigration reform and that they do not have the license to go and do these atrocities.
All right, our final issue this evening is who's got the best strategy to win the general. We'll start with the general election. We'll start with Dr. Schrei.
Dr. Schrei.
Dr. Schrei, how you gonna win?
Not all of you know my story, but the day after the 2016 election, I woke up and I was alarmed and decided this was going to be a moment in history when we were all going to need to roll up our sleeves and get involved. And that's what I did. And ever since then, I have been running in this race. When that first Trump care bill came out, I went and met with Dave Reichert's staff and explained all the ways that would be terrible for people in our district. And when he voted in committee to take health care away from 70,000 people in this district, I decided to run against him. And I've been taking either him or Dino Rossi on this entire race. It started with healthcare and Dave Reichert, and quickly after that went to Charlottesville and we had Nazis walking in our street, and I called on Reichert because he had an anemic response to that. Then he announced his retirement and Rossi was in. Well, I was the first one to take on Rossi and say, hey, you took $400,000 from the NRA. It's time to take that money and put it towards school safety and make our children safe in school with active shooter drills. And after that, Rossi stayed quiet. So I went after him via the New York Times and via the Washington Post and got him to comment about tariffs, finally admitting that tariffs were not good for the people in this district. And after that, I went after him on child separation. I have been taking on Rossi from day one that he came into this race, and I will continue to take on Dino Rossi. And the fact of the matter is that we are going to need a candidate who can take him on from day one, and I have the campaign already organized that can do it. I have raised more money from more donors in this district than anybody else. I am the only one who has the proven ability to keep up with Dino Rossi's kind of fundraising, and I've raised $1.6 million from individuals. That's how I have done this over the past year. In addition, I have built out a campaign that can take on Dino Rossi. We have organizers in every corner of this district. We have volunteers everywhere. That is the reason we have knocked over 50,000 doors and communicated with voters in every corner of this district. In addition, I have the support, the sole endorsements from major endorsers in this race, including Planned Parenthood, Emily's List, and the Aerospace Machinists. In addition, the Washington State Labor Council. These are groups that have helped make Dino Rossi a 3-time loser and will help me make him a 4-time loser. This is a critical race at a critical time. Roe v. Wade is on the table. We have a healthcare crisis, we have an immigration crisis, and we really need to flip this seat and 22 others to have a Democratic majority in the House. I am leaving nothing to chance. I am running a campaign that can beat Dino Rossi. I am prepared to run that campaign on day one. I have the best contrast, and I have the best campaign to beat him.
Peter.
So it has been a real privilege to start campaigning around this district. We are a diverse district, small to medium to teeny tiny little towns. I'm fifth generation in that Auburn, Kent, Tukwila Valley. Grew up in Auburn on my great-grandfather's old farm property. Went off to college, became the first person in my family to get a 4-year degree. That was based on our public educations here. And so I'm a true believer in what our district has to offer. And as I have traveled this district, up, down, back, and forth, I have been door knocking in pretty much all the big cities, not so big, 10,000 above, that we have in this district. And I've been meeting people, going to where people are at, whether it's retirement homes, churches, community meetings, down groups, indivisibles, resists. And I tell you, red to blue across our purple district, people's number one frustration is lack of action and lack of results in Congress. And you know what? That's what I'm bringing to the table, a proven track record of delivering results that matter, that change people's lives with federal people, policy, and dollars. When I was done with my medical training, I chose a life of service. I joined the Commission Corps of the U.S. Public Health Service. I was assigned to CDC, and I have been in and out of the federal government as civil servant, as Commission Corps, really making things work. My last job, I ran our Division of Global HIV and TB, which is a big job. 2,000 people, 45 countries, $2.4 billion a year that I managed with transparency, accountability, drove outcomes up and costs down. And at the time I left, I and my team had contributed to more than 2.2 million babies being born HIV-free across this globe who otherwise would have been infected. And that's a testimony to the taxpayers, our commitment, and frankly, our ingenuity as Americans, saying that, you know what, we're going to lead the world to do something nobody else thinks is possible. And that is a successful bipartisan program in this day and age. So you know what? I am all about making this competition with Dino about what I call proof points over talking points. Because you know Dino, he's going to talk real smooth, huh? He talks out of both sides of his mouth. He's convinced people he is the moderate, bipartisan, middle-of-the-road kind of guy, and we know nothing could be further from the truth, right? Facts just don't back that up. So, you know, I am the person who can call on Dino and say, you know what, Dino, in this district where people want action and results from this federal position, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. Because he hasn't got anything to show, right? He has never driven results from federal people policy results. And I do. And that's why people will trust me to move forward and deliver for everyone on Congress. And that's why people are going to come out to vote. So a combination of that experience. Yes, sir.
I've just decided to start playing the game. Dino, you know, will say, well, I balanced the budget in 2003 and without hurting the vulnerable. And then, so that's what I'm showing you. How do you respond to that?
Well, you know what? A couple of things. So he's saying more than that, right? He's saying more than that. He has this, you know, slogan from Mona Das from early days in the campaign saying, none of us Democrats have any experience at all. Well, that was before I joined the race. So already I think I'm going to take him by surprise. So when he says this, I tell you, some folks are quibbling about what the facts are. We could quibble about the facts because those facts I think aren't very true, but I don't even need to go there because what I want to say is that was 15 years ago. Everybody did bipartisan work 15 years ago. We're in a totally different world right now. You know, I have done bipartisan work in this day and age, and it's not because it's all about a kumbaya moment where we're just, you know, having a party and everybody gets along. It's predicated on a strategy that I can show, tell, and do over and over again because I'm going to apply it when I get up there. I think I'm on point of information, not times.
That's true. But you said that you were going to say... Yeah.
So, I mean...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
you're
we have hand signals over here.
Regular scheduled program.
And so, I think that's important because the way we did bipartisan programs is something Dino's never done. It's identifying a common goal, not requiring a purity of motive for getting there. You can have all sorts of reasons to believe in that goal. Mapping out some initial first steps that are transparent, that you can see, that have measurable income outputs, achieving them, building trust, and moving forward. I've done that in my global HIV program. I will do that in Congress, and that refutes Dino's idea, because this is in this day and age, that somehow some little who knows what happened 15 years ago is a relevant skill.
I take your point.
All right. So back to the rest.
Yeah, sure.
So we talked about the experience to get things done day one and the kind of trust that garners in the electorate to get out to vote. The second part I got is the community connection. In addition to my roots and my lived experience, I have been doing the work. As I mentioned, I have been doorbelling up, down, back and forth across this big district, and it's been paying off. I've been meeting people in the communities where they're at, and it's been paying off. That is why I have gotten every single legislative district and county district Dem group that is endorsed in this race to date has endorsed me, and 12 out of 15 of those are sole endorsements as the candidate they know can beat Dino Rossi in the fall and then hold President Trump accountable from Congress. So Dino's going to have more money than God. We already know that. None of us are going to outraise him. We need to raise money to be able to have the tools to reach the voters, but we're not going to outraise him and his black ops money, including 4 super PACs and Paul Ryan's super PAC that is already open in office in Issaquah. So we got to have the power of the people. And that's what I'm bringing to the table. It's already started. That's why my field game started early on. That's why I've got the endorsements. That's why I've got backup from labor on both sides of the mountains. That's why I've got grassroots support. That's what we're going to mobilize, and that's what we're going to do. So watch out, Dina. We're here.
Point of information. Point of interest, a point of information.
Yeah.
I love the idea of community connection because that's what I've been doing too. I've been creating connections for the past year with voters all over this district. And I'm really proud of the fact that the money that I've raised in this campaign has come from people all over, from individuals. But I'm running against someone who has financed her own campaign with hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so my question is, where are those community connections? And are you going to continue to fund your own race, or will you be raising from the communities in this district?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. So here's the thing. A lot of folks know, I know Dr. Schreier knows, I have a bit of a non-traditional pathway in this race because I came in about, I think I launched 6 months after these two did. And that's because that last job at CDC, I had made a 3-year commitment when I took that job, and I keep my commitments. So that commitment was up the 2nd week of October, and I left the next pay period. And guess what? I also follow the law. There's something called the Hatch Act, which says a federal employee not only cannot run for partisan office, but they can't even whisper to anyone other than their family and maybe a couple of close friends that they're even considering running for partisan office. So when I showed up on the scene, I was a big old surprise to everyone.
She asked, are you going to continue self-funding?
I am getting there because, well, here's the thing. I knew my pathway through the primary was going to be on a different pace and a different track than a typical congressional candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I had markers I was going to hit to fund what I needed to do in the primary, and I've done that. I will never ask someone else to do what I'm not willing to do myself. So putting up money to make sure I hit my marks and have the tools to implement my communication strategy, I'm doing that. That's not a problem. I also know that come August 8th, it's an entirely new race. I have talked to so many donors who were already in the race before I got here, who said, you know what, August 8th, we are with you. And I think as Democrats, that's the message we've had completely across this district. We're all competing. We're all trying to win this primary. We know for a fact that come August 8th, everybody is together to beat Dino Rossi.
Mr. Horizon? After this, each candidate, by the way, will have 2-minute closing statements.
I'm going to apologize to people at home, and I'm going to stand up for this last one. I want to see everybody in the audience. I was born and raised in this district. I was born and raised in this community. My dad was a police chief in town here. My mom served on the city council and started a children's museum in town. There's my brother's hands on the wall of that children's museum forever. My first job was on a hay farm out in Kittitas Valley, not far from here. And I paid for my education by working hard. I got a degree in economics, and then I went to work for Congressman Rick Larson. I went to law school, and I came back to serve as a criminal prosecutor for King County. Then I went to private practice and worked every single day to be a voice for people who need it. Since I have had the right to vote in our country, we have been at war. My high school class went on to fight the first iteration of the war on terror. We've gone through the worst recession in 100 years. Our climate's rapidly deteriorating. The only thing that has happened is that we have concentrated power at the highest levels for corporations and rich people. And our government is not working for people. I'm angry about where this country's headed. Donald Trump stood on a stage on foreign soil and declared allegiance to Vladimir Putin over U.S. intelligence. He denounced American law enforcement. I am angry about where this country's headed. I'm running for Congress because I think it's time for the next generation of leaders to step up and take on our challenges. This isn't just about beating Dino Rossi. This is about setting a new generation of leadership, of progressive leaders who will stand up and fight every single day for people. We can have a government that is by the people, for the people, and serves people if we want to. Or we can have it the other way around. Dino Rossi presents the other way around. That's what he serves. You know, Dino Rossi has run 3 times statewide. He's lost all 3 times. But he has won the 8th Congressional District every single time. This is not a Seattle suburb district. This is a district that is South King County and East Pierce County and Eastern Washington. It is a district that its core is small town, rural, working class folks. Folks I represent. Folks I fight for. This district has never elected a Democrat. Never. This district has gone for a Republican member of Congress since 1980. It has been insulated from political waves the entire time. If we are going to win this race, we need somebody who can connect with votes every single corner of this district. This is a district that crosses the Cascade Mountains. There is an urban and a rural divide in this district that I am uniquely situated to unite. I have lived on both sides of the mountains, and I understand both sides of the mountains. We need to send people to Congress who will stand up and fight, and I'll go right through Dino Rossi to get to Donald Trump. Here's what I'll go toe-to-toe with Dino Rossi on. Dino Rossi voted to take health care away from 46,000 children in our district. He voted to gut protections for our LGBTQ neighbors. Dino Rossi has voted every chance he has gotten to take reproductive health care rights away from women. Dino Rossi took an appointment to the state Senate and held up school construction and held up affordable housing I was working on as a member of the State Advisory Council on Homelessness. I'm going to challenge him with those questions at a debate stage. And you know what? He served as a Trump delegate. A guy that stood on stage and declared allegiance to a Russian Federation over the United States of America. I'm angry about where this country's headed. And I'm going through Dino Rossi to get to Donald Trump and turn our country back around and put it on the right track we know we deserve.
Point of information.
Go for it.
When Dino won't debate you, he'll probably lay low and hang out.
Of course he will.
What are you going to do to make him face you?
I will show up in every corner of the district at any time, in any place. I will track him down and I will make him debate these issues. I have a little bit of experience in this arena because in my day job, I haul in CEOs of companies that harm people and I hold them to account in conference rooms until they're uncomfortable enough to do the right thing. That's exactly what we need in the United States Congress because Dino looks a heck of a lot like those CEOs. Now here's the thing.
Yeah, all right, I take your point. You're back on your time. I just wanted to be clear because I wasn't there with fans.
Voters want a track record of people who get things done. I operate every day in an environment in which we never agree on the facts. We never agree on how the law applies to those facts. But we come into really complicated situations. Situations that other folks couldn't solve. Situations that have gone to litigation. And we use our skill set to work with the other side, solve these complicated challenges, and defend people's rights at the same time. That's the type of leadership we need in the United States Congress. I'm the only person up here who currently has subpoena power. You know what's going to happen in the 116th Congress? We're going to utilize subpoena power to put oversight on the Trump administration. Here's what I've done. I've utilized that subpoena power to represent a woman who was fired from Burger King because she wore a hijab to work. They didn't like how she looked. Well, I hauled their CEO in, I held him to account, and when the settlement arrived, you know what she did? She bought beds for her children who were previously sleeping on the floor. I've wielded subpoena power to help people. I understand what we need, and I'll fight every single day for you in Congress.
Any POIs? No, all right. Now we're moving to closing statements. We'll go in the beginning order so that we have come full circle. So, Hader, Brittreiser, and then Schreiber. Hey.
All right, so I'm going to make eye contact with all of you as well. I'm Shannon Hader. I'm running for U.S. Congress. Hello. So thank you all for being here tonight. We are just so privileged to be here with you. I hope that you all got your ballots today. If not, you're going to get them tomorrow. And I tell you, what an important race. I don't think that there has ever been a more important primary in the last, in my lifetime than I can think of. So I hope other people here think that way. And I tell you, a lot of your neighbors might not realize there's a primary. So if you do one thing when you leave here tonight, other than fill out Shannon Hader on your ballot, go ahead and see if your neighbors know there's a primary. Get people to vote, because we really need people to wake up and vote in this one. Now, we are at a turning point in this country. We are going backwards on so many things at a pace I would never have imagined. And in fact, I was inside this Trump administration as a senior leader for 9 months, and I can tell you what's happening inside these agencies, even at CDC, which is not a particularly targeted agency, is even worse what you see on the outside. We are insidiously and covertly dismantling programs and our capacity to respond. It makes us less safe and less ready to go forward. So I tell you, I'm a woman of action. Yes, I'm angry about where we're at. Yes, I'm angry about the direction we're going in. But you know what? I've got the experience not just to have rhetoric and call names and get angry, but translate that anger to action. I have a proven track record of delivering results that change people's lives. I am new to being a politician, but I am not new to how to get things done in Congress. So that experience, that ability to start day one, that community connection and commitment to you, that's what I'll bring to Congress, and that's what I want to do to serve you. So I'd love your support. I'd love your vote. Please mark Shannon Hader on your ballot, and let's go beat Dino Rossi. Thanks.
Just Brittreiser.
This one's important. The most important thing we can do is take back control of the United States Congress. We need 23 seats in order to do that. There are 23 districts across the country in which a Republican member of Congress currently holds office, and Hillary Clinton won that district. We are one of those districts. Clinton won this district by 3 points. Yes. We got to do a little better though. 23 districts. 6 of them are open seats. We are going to be the last swing district in the country to count on election night. No pressure. Let's take that anger. Let's turn it into action. Let's organize our communities. Let's stand up. If you're mad about what Donald Trump did on a stage on foreign soil, vote. If you're angry about our immigration system, get your neighbor to vote. If you're angry about the direction of healthcare, get your community to vote. And vote for someone who will stand up and fight every single day for you. We can turn this country around. We can do it if we elect progressive leaders who will go to Congress and stand up for working class folks. I think that income inequality remains one of the greatest threats to our democracy. I think dark money is eroding our politics and our democracy, and unless we send people to Congress who will fight on the front lines, who've been on the front lines of these fights, we're not going to turn back around. But we've got an opportunity here. We can elect someone to Congress from the Washington 8th Congressional District who's a Democrat for the first time in our state's history. Let's do that. I would be honored to earn your support. This is an important race. I want to get through the August 7th primary. I want to take on Dino Rossi. I want to get to the United States Congress to represent you and fight every day for my community, because this is where I'm from. Thank you so much. I'd love to earn your support. We've got yard signs, we've got stickers. Fill out your ballot. I'll hang around after this and love to chat with you. Thank you so much.
And Dr. Schreiber.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. All right, now you've got the mama pediatrician with a fire in her belly. This is a critical moment in history. I cannot remember a more important election than this one. I really believe, like my colleagues, that we are at a tipping point in this country right now. And if we do not flip Congress this year, we're going to end up going further down this path of bigotry, racism, xenophobia, environmental destruction, attacks on women's rights, attacks on the middle class. We have only seen the start of it. We cannot leave anything to chance. And frankly, right now, with the Supreme Court about to go hard right, this is the moment when we need a woman pediatrician who will go and fight like heck for women's reproductive rights. It is a moment when we need more people in Congress with a background in science because it really, really does matter. I am the person who can beat Dino Rossi. I have a proven record already of running a campaign that is a well-oiled machine. I have over 6,500 people who have already donated to this campaign, and you know what? They're ready to double down for the general. That's how we're going to take on Dino Rossi. I already have organizers in every corner of this district, organizing volunteers, hundreds of them, and that is how we have gotten to 50,000, that's 50,000 doors. It is going to take reaching every voter in this district, leaving nothing to chance in order to flip this seat, because we've got to do it. We've got to flip this one and 22 others, take back the House, and put some checks and balances on this administration. Emily's List, Planned Parenthood, Washington State Labor Council, and the aerospace machinists are all in this army with me to beat Dino Rossi.
All right, well, that does it for us. Hang around. Glad to have you with the candidates. Thank you all for coming out. And be sure to vote, please. Tell everybody to vote. Good night.
What did Brian say? I didn't see.
I didn't see what he said. Good to see you.
Great, that's right. Yes.
Rob.
But he's Bob. Remember, you were the restaurant.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
It's Bob's purse.
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to get back tonight.